because they don't have an answer for any of those. Lastly, or fifthly, we have what's called macroevolution. This is where an animal changes to a different kind of animal. Nobody has ever observed any of this. We never see a dog produce a non-dog. You may get a big dog or a little dog, but you're going to get a dog, and there are limits to these changes. Okay? You're never going to get a dog as big as Texas or a dog as small as a flea. There are limits. Sure, there are changes, but there are limits. And the further you get from the norm, the more problems you have. You start having hip dysplasia and disease resistance goes down and stuff like that. So the normal, average, generic mutt is probably where it started. And now all these special breeds we've created, like the Chihuahua, definitely swimming in the shallow end of the gene pool, are certainly basically useless in my book. But every kid knows that a dog, a wolf, and a coyote are the same kind of animal. We do this in churches. I'll get a 5-year-old kid, and I'll say, which one of these is different, boys and girls? The dog, the wolf, the coyote, or the banana? They pick it out almost every time. One kid said, the boy. And well, it's the banana. Okay. The Bible says the animals will bring forth after their kind. Now, Charlie Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species. The argument is not about the origin of species. The argument's about the origin of kinds. I'm not sure who's deciding when a new species has been created or not. You know, a dog and a wolf are different species, but they're obviously the same kind of animal. I'd like to meet the guy who's making the decision. This is a new species, okay? It's still the same kind. Lastly, we have what's called microevolution. I don't like the term. I think it's confusing. We should just call it a variation within the kind. But whatever you call it, number 6 happens. That one I agree with. All the first 5 are purely imagination. Students have to be taught to believe in these by computer animations or, pictures of how it might have happened. It all takes place in the imagination. It never takes place in reality. People say, couldn't God use evolution to get us here? Well, that depends what you mean by God. The God that would use evolution is cruel, wasteful, stupid. He's deceitful. He's not the God of the Bible, that's for sure. It's not in the character of God to use misfits, blind chance, and death. My God gets it right first time. He doesn't have to practice, okay? Jacques Monod, a Nobel Prize winner, said, natural selection is the blindest, most cruel way of evolving new species and more complex and refined organisms. The struggle for life and elimination of the weakest is a horrible process against which the whole modern ethics revolts. An ideal society is a non-selective society, one where the weak is protected, which is exactly the opposite of the reverse of the so-called natural law. I'm surprised that a Christian would defend the idea that this is the process which God more or less set up in order to have evolution. I'm surprised also that Christians try to blend evolution with creation. David Hull, Northwest University, said, whatever the God implied by evolutionary theory and the data of natural selection may be like, he is not the Protestant God of waste not, want not. He is also not a loving God who cares about his productions. He is not even the awful God portrayed in the book of Job. The God of Galapagos is careless, wasteful, indifferent, almost diabolical. He is certainly not the sort of God to whom anyone would be inclined to pray. Charlie Darwin said in his book, thus from the war of nature and famine and the death, the most exalted object we're capable of conceiving, the production of higher animals follows. Evolution is a religion of death and struggle and cruelty. It is not compatible with the Scriptures. My Bible says God's work is perfect. He made it right first time. The God that would use evolution is deceitful. It's not the God of the Bible. There's no evidence for evolution anyway. The Bible says God formed the world by His Word. He spoke it into existence. He did it in 6 days. He told us clearly how He did it. He didn't use millions of years to get here. I think it'd be a retarded God that can't make it right first time. I wouldn't worship a God like that. Okay? It nullifies the need for the death of Christ by having God use this evolutionary process, and there is no evidence for evolution. So why would we compromise a perfectly good Bible, which has never been proven wrong, with a dumb theory that has never been proven right? I see no reason to compromise in this war. Okay. Are they the same? No, the Bible and evolution are absolutely backwards in every respect. We could spend an hour talking about this one. They're irreconcilably different. Evolution says death brought man into the world. The Bible says man brought death into the world. The differences are impossible to reconcile. Somebody is wrong. And I enjoy showing them who they are. Okay, now, suppose I said, I have a theory that the moon is made of green cheese. Okay, it's okay to have a dumb theory, that's perfectly fine. Then, suppose I said, NASA proved it when they went there in 1973 on a secret mission. Well, it's okay to have a dumb theory, but it's not okay to use lies to support my theory, right? It's even worse to use tax dollars to get paid while I lie to support my theory. So if there's evidence for evolution, I really want to see it. The textbook says you're an animal and share a common heritage with earthworms. This is ludicrous, okay? If you want to believe your great-great-grandpa was a worm, you go ahead and believe that, but don't use my tax dollars to teach that to my kids, okay? You go teach that to your kids at your religious school. Now, they say they have evidence for evolution. They say they have evidence from fossils. I'm telling you, folks, in a court of law, fossils wouldn't hold up 1 second as evidence. You bring in your bones and say, these bones are the ancestors of us today. They're going to laugh at you and say, Your Honor, he can't prove those bones had any kids. He sure can't prove they had different kids. Absolutely no fossils could possibly count in this discussion. When you find fossils in the dirt, all you know is it died. So don't tell me fossils are evidence for evolution. They talk about the fossil record. I say, hold it, first place, there is no fossil record. There are a bunch of bones in the dirt. It's not a record, okay? There aren't dates on them. They're just a bunch of bones in the dirt. There's just as much evidence for a flood. They say they have evidence from structure, evidence from molecular biology, evidence from development, like you talked about tonight. Well, we're going to talk about some of those as quick as we can. The textbooks start off with the assumption that the universe is billions of years old and started with the Big Bang. I think that theory is ludicrous and has been proven wrong years ago. That's not science. We cover that in great detail on our video number 1 out there on the table. If you want to get one of those. There's not many left, sorry about that. But they tell the kids that radioactive dating proves things are millions of years old. That is also not evidence for evolution. Radioactive dating is ridiculous. We cover that thoroughly on video 7. There's an example where living snails were carbon dated 27,000 years old. They're still alive, okay? This is 1984. I give many examples on video number 7 about that. This guy said, in the last 2 years, an absolute date has been obtained for the Gandong beds. It has the interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. Well, they nailed that one right on the head, didn't they? Anyway, get video 7 if you want more on carbon dating or potassium-argon dating or uranium-lead dating. I got them all on video 7. So they tell the kids the Earth is billions of years old. That is not evidence for evolution. Even if the Earth were billions of years old, there's still no evidence for evolution. And I think there's ample evidence the Earth is not billions of years old, and we cover that on video number 1 of our series. They tell the kids the Earth started off hot and it slowly cooled down. Yet the Bible says the Earth was created underwater. It was never a hot molten mass. The scientific evidence points to the fact that the Bible is right, because all over the world radiopolonium halos are found. Very short half-life on polonium-218 and 214, like down to less than 3 minutes. And you can get the book, you can go to halos.com if you want a whole lot more on the radiopolonium halos. They prove positively the Earth was never a hot molten mass. Cover that on video 7. Textbook says stalactites form slowly, very slowly, tiny drops of water. That is not evidence for evolution. It's not evidence for anything. It's not even true. Here's me standing by a stalagmite. It's only 100 years old in Thermopolis, Wyoming. Okay, it happens very quickly. This is not a stalagmite, actually. This is a flowstone formation from simply minerals in mineral water being pumped out of a pipe. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and by one man sin came into the world, and death by sin. Yet Darwin said, death brought man into the world. Somebody's wrong, folks. Did man bring death into the world, or did death bring man into the world? Don't try to compromise the two. Get on or get off. Somebody's wrong, okay? Textbook says this is Grandpa. 30 million years ago, larger primates such as monkeys and apes evolved. They are ancestral to both humans and modern apes. Look, you're welcome to believe that. But that's not science. It's not observable science, that's for sure. That's not Grandpa, okay? Now, all of the so-called evidence for evolution from the cavemen that I'm aware of, and I've studied it real actively now for 30-some years, all of it has been discredited. I mean, you pick your caveman, Homo erectus, Java man, Piltdown man, Lucy, they've all been discredited. This article in the newspaper says, he's the daddy of us all. This is silly. You don't know he's the daddy of anybody. All you know is he found some bones in the dirt. That's all you know. You can't prove he had any kids that lived. Don't tell me he's the daddy of us all. They're lying to you, okay? Cover much more on the cavemen in video number 2. They tell us dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. That is simply not true. There's ample evidence dinosaurs have always lived with man. We covered that for 2 hours, for 2.5 hours on our video number 3. Textbook says the Colorado River cut the Grand Canyon slowly over millions of years. That's ludicrous. The top of Grand Canyon is higher than both ends. Rivers don't flow uphill. Grand Canyon's a washed-out spillway. Anybody that studies it will know that. I flew down it 2 days ago coming here. Took a bunch of pictures flying down across the Grand Canyon. It's a 1-mile rise spread out over 270 miles, so you don't notice it much. But it's not formed by the Colorado River. The textbooks tell the kids each of the layers of rock is a different age. The whole geologic column is baloney. It doesn't exist any place on Earth except the textbooks. There is no geologic column. This guy admits it. He said if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately no such column exists. It's a great theory, but it's not science. It's not observable. You can have all the theories you want, but where's the beef? Where's the evidence, okay? All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these layers. Now here they are telling us these layers are different ages, and yet we got petrified trees connecting them. They're not different ages, folks. They all formed in one big flood in the days of Noah. We cover that on video number 4, about the geologic column. Okay, textbook says the Devonian period is characterized by the lobe-finned fish, like we heard about tonight. Well, they say this is proof of evolution, that it slowly evolved from fish to amphibians, reptiles, mammals. Just memorize the word farm and you got it. F-A-R-M, fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. This is what they imagine it might have happened like, but it is pure imagination. And the lobe-finned fish are still very much alive. When they found the coelacanth swimming around the Indian Ocean back in 1938, they brought one into the scientists and they said, wow, look at this. They survived for 300 million years. Never dawned on them one time to question the theory, because the theory is sacred. The evidence must fit the theory. Now, see the way science is supposed to work. You get a theory, you check the evidence. If the evidence says, nope, the theory's not right, you throw the theory away. You get a new theory. That's the way it's supposed to work. And it does work that way in science with everything except this evolution theory. And I think I know why. I think it's because the only alternative to evolution is creation. And if creation is true, then there's a creator. And if there's a creator, there might be some rules. You mean like thou shalt not? Ooh, we don't want those rules. So we're going to deny the creator. That's really what it boils down to in every instance. The lobe-finned fish is still alive. The textbooks tell the kids you can tell the evidence for evolution because of the similar four-limb structures. This one says these homologous structures provide evidence that these animals evolved from a common ancestor. And they show the two bones in the wrist of all kinds of different animals. This is silly. This textbook says comparative anatomy provides further evidence of evolution. The commonalities suggest these and other vertebrate animals are all related. They probably evolved from a common ancestor. That is ludicrous. They probably have a common designer is why they're similar. The different bones develop from different genes on the chromosomes. And even if they were coming from the same genes on the chromosomes and they're not, that still wouldn't be evidence for evolution. It could be evidence for a common designer. And they're so complex things don't happen automatically. Somebody has to create them. You know, doing an imagination, computer animation of how it might have happened, that's not science. That's imagination. The lug nuts from a Pontiac will fit on a Chevy. You go try it. They will. That proves they both evolved from a Honda 14 million years ago. No. That proves the same guys are making them, okay? It's common designer. Textbooks are going to tell your kids that the peppered moth is evidence for evolution. This was proven wrong years ago. The peppered moth, according to the story, had dark babies and light babies, but on the light-colored trees, the light ones blended in better, and the dark ones got eaten more. And then when they burned coal in the factories, the trees turned dark, and the dark ones blended in better, and the light ones got eaten. And so they say the population ratio shifted from 95% light to 95% dark. Well, the problem is the whole story is baloney. It didn't happen. They glued dead moths on the tree to take that picture for your kid's textbook. After 40 years of watching, they found 2 moths on the trees. 2 in 40 years. What's 95% of 2? So, if you have evidence for evolution, I really want to see it. However, the peppered moth is not evidence for evolution. Even if the story were true, all they had was a shift in the population ratio. That's proof of a designer giving his creatures the ability to produce a variety of offspring, so some will always survive. That's still evidence for creation, if the story were true. Not evidence for evolution. The idea of the embryo having gill slits has been proven wrong years ago. This textbook says the presence of fish-like structures in embryos of different species shows these animals have evolved from fish and share the basic pattern of fish development. This is simply not true. They say it has gills like a fish. Just because the skin is wrinkled up, I get the same wrinkles